Chilly here with Sirius Moon, and let's see if we have. Well, we'll soon to have internet. Um, what prompted me to press record? So apparently, there's a movie done on an Israeli crime family called Alperon, and I saw the actor that's to be. Yeah, I was driving the bus with the actor that's going to play the roles of the person who was mitigating or the conflicts that they had in the family. Um, I know nothing about these things, but immediately what I see as an astrologer, if I look at um, date of murder of Yaakov Alperon, which is 17 November 2008, immediately what pops up is subprime crisis. Okay, Pluto ingressed into Capricorn. Again, I know nothing about the family. It's an Israeli family. He was born 18 February 1955. So that would be the Pluto Leo. Was it Pluto Leo? Pluto Leo generation. That means it would have Neptune either at the end of Libra or the beginning of Scorpio, which means that Pluto is effectively squaring his Neptune at this time. And there is a movie done about him, Neptune Rules Movies. 18 favored, it means he would have Sun at the end of Aquarius or beginning of Pisces. I think at the end of Aquarius with this one. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 29 degrees Sun in Aquarius. 1955, so we had Pluto at the end of Leo, beginning of Virgo. Neptune, yeah, the walking ephemeris. Neptune at the end of Libra, beginning Scorpio. Saturn, his Saturn, I believe, would be in Scorpio. So Sun at the end of Aquarius. Uranus at the time was in Leo. So this was the generation bordering from the Pluto Leos to the Pluto Virgos. I believe this Pluto is Leo, and it was the co-presence of Pluto and Uranus in Leo. That would perfect to a conjunction in Virgo. So it was a revolution of the power of the leader. Again, Pluto sextiling. We're in the we're basically within the sextile. It's after the bisextile that we had with Uranus Gemini, Pluto Leo, and Neptune in Libra, and coming to the Pluto Uranus conjunction that would give us chaos theory with all of its manifestations. So at that time, we really saw the power of the individual leader. It was still the Pluto Leo. In terms of astrology, it was the solar astrology, the very psychologically invasive when it comes to the personality. And this was a person who was, together with his brother Nissim, managing the business of a crime family, Alperon, which was the central crime family in Israel in the 70s, in the 1970s. Now, immediately when I see murdered 2008, he was murdered upon the ingress, or around the ingress of Pluto from Sagittarius to Capricorn. Another thing that happened at the time was, of course, the exposure of Jeffrey Epstein. And Jeffrey Epstein was trafficking 16, 17 years old. And to say trafficking is very redundant because those are people that grew up into trafficking in secret societies oaths and rites of passage that are horrific. And um, and I think then the coming Pluto Capricorns are probably going to expose that, particularly the ones that would have Venus co-present with Pluto. This would be probably a generation that we have some of them really going through these rites of passages and reaching higher ranks, but also many that will say, well, enough with the Zumbors, enough with the ritual abuse, enough with those oaths and rites of passages of going up the rank, because they are the most affected. They are the talents. For example, I have Jupiter. Whoa. I have Jupiter in Capricorn, the middle decan of Capricorn, ruling my ascendant and midheaven, ruling my Uranus. And when Pluto was applying to oppose my moon, going over that Jupiter, I wrote a satire on that very rite of passage. I did not know what it is because we're not told. And basically what happened is I looked at it as I was an academic person, so I wasn't coming from a crime family, I wasn't taking oaths or anything like that. And to go through the rites of passage, basically that would open a network of relations. There were several attempts, whether it's from the intelligence and a lot of interesting job offers that really wanted me, both in Israel and I guess abroad, that I wasn't aware of. They wanted me to go through that rite of passage. And I was like, that's human trafficking, which it is. It is horrible, horrible thing. And if I think about when Pluto went through my ruler of ascendant and midheaven, and ascendant and 10th house, because 10th house is career, then basically I revolted. I have Uranus in the 10th house. I revolted against what I now understand is the rite of passage. And everybody was heartbroken. And I was like, but that's a no, like the world is, the reason, you know, and this is why my prediction for the Pluto Capricorn generation is that those of them with, let's say, Venus, Jupiter in Capricorn are depending on the placement of Uranus. Okay, Uranus at the time was going through Pisces and then Aries. I wrote Sugar Free Lemonade with Uranus was conjoining Aries and scoring Pluto. It was a time where Beyonce released her Lemonade album, and and I was like Sugar Free Lemonade. It wasn't. It was not something I wrote for profit, so it wasn't the issue of even original. I wasn't trying to be original. I was just expressing something that didn't find a way to be expressed in another mean. And I had no idea what the symbols that I was using, what they meant. And so if I think about the Jeffrey Epstein, he was trafficking 16, 17 years old. And basically these women, some of them were trafficked, some of them were survivors, some of them would be women that would end up in from the White House to decision making. And that was a rite of passage at the time. Jeffrey Epstein was himself born into this cult. An even more severe case was Mark Dutroux that began to kidnap children. And the funny and it's gonna be very cruel what I'm saying, but the fact is that the rite of passage for the children that were kidnapped by Mark Dutroux were basically a way of getting children that weren't in the bloodline for these type of inaugurations to be. It was both the clients that had to be introduced to the network and the people that were trafficked. Some of them, if we take Annika Lucas, for example, she was considered an expandable child. Then she was blood tested, and then they wanted to train her as the elite. So, okay, so some of these people would be dead, some of them would be alive, and some of them would be trafficked into the network to become decision makers hidden and invisible. And that begins to expose the rite of passage within the secret societies that nobody could talk about it. Nobody could challenge that norm, even if because people were in dissociation. Right now, for example, I have a Facebook friend who is anonymously writing about basically trauma of ritual abuse, and one of their offenders died. It was a public person. I don't even know who that was. It doesn't matter for the record. He said, everybody write what a great person they were, and I'm here with this thing. And she was afraid to speak the name and so on and so forth. First of all, the right of the public to know is more important. And secondly, the those types of rite of passages, whether it's the Zoom wars, whether it's the, whatever they're called, or in academia, in Ivy League even, those things, if everybody has to stay silent about them, nobody can change and evolve, and I think that can create a moldy structure. So Anya Wick, for example, came from the Epstein family, and she said, yes, Epstein was doing that to 16 to 17s. Her father was doing that to 3 years old. And so immediately when I think about 2008 was when we were first introduced to what is actually the rite of passage, that outside these circles is human trafficking, um, child abuse, ritual abuse, sexual harassment, rape, and horrid things that even those words cannot even begin to, cult-like, and so on. But within those societies, that's considered something that's like later they become, later it's like you run to us, and so because of these oaths and silences, nobody actually gets to challenge those rites and rituals, and what is considered, for example, if a person wouldn't come from a certain bloodline, or they didn't know a certain bloodline had this and that capacities, they would be like, oh, okay, let's put them through the rite of passage, which is horrid ritual abuse. And that person wouldn't even know what is disdain, and so on and so forth. So this is the context that I have for the assassination of Alperon. And when I think about assassination in these circles, usually the people who get assassinated are the people that challenge the status quo. And so this is something even every reader is like, I don't even know if Jeffrey Epstein wasn't coming to challenge the status quo. Marc Dutroux. Okay, Michel Nihul confined the entire case around Marc Dutroux. Annika Lucas have several things to say about Michel Nihul, but the way I joke about it, sank to Michel. um, how did I get to? How did we get here? So and to the outside world, it's like, well, another drug lord, another trafficker, another this, another that. From within that society, those could have been the more liberal people. I'm not saying always. There are many reasons that they would want to get rid of one person and another. Sometimes it's just a control issue. But here's the thing: if they want the most control and somebody is looking to be, more moderate, then then in many cases that could be a problem. Well, Pluto Capricorn was putting us through transforming the rite of passage, transforming those rituals, and the Pluto Capricorn generation are going to very likely be exposed. A lot of them were born. If I were sugar-free lemonade, when Pluto was conjoining my Jupiter and Aries, Uranus were squaring Pluto, many people were born that year. So many people would hold the sugar-free lemonade time step to their natal chart. They're gonna have the Saturn returns, the Saturn maturation, the Pluto squares, the Neptune squares, the Uranus squares, and and I got into what I was only the precipice of. They're gonna be en masse an entire generation that's gonna challenge the status quo in a very big way, because they are also going to be facing those things. And now let's take a look at, so Yaakov Alperon was assassinated by a bombing. They bombed his car. Famous method for the intelligence when they were assassinating, let's say, Hamas heads. He was the sixth child of Chaim and Camila Alperon, who came from Egypt, Phoenicians. Um, and he was a criminal while he was a youth. He lived in Ra'anana with his wife Ahuva, and they had 7 children. So he was accused of violence, blackmail, and set in jail. 2 of his brothers, Nissim and Zelman, were also convicted. And in the last decade, so since 2007 to 2017, he was in conflict with a Bergil family and Amir Molnar. Okay, all crime families. The person I met is supposed, I think, to play Yaakov. It's a series called Aborer, which is basically about sorting the issues between. They're just filming that. So during a meeting with Molnar in a hotel in Herzliya in 2007, those were the times where Pluto going through the galactic center. It was also 2007 was the red shoes behind murder of Madeleine, the secret society. They're associated with Nazis in Germany. Again, the word Nazis is very weird right now because the that was if we take into account paper clips. So what people say Nazi is completely different from the reality, which is way more global and not only named in that name. So Alperon was stabbing Muller in his neck, and then they met again at the end of 2006, which ended with knives and guns, but no harmed people. In the beginning of 2007, there was a meeting with the Abergel family for recycling of bottles. So they were in the business of recycling bottles. Basically, the bottles we buy drinking, and we put them into the machines. So the people that own these machines, and also they basically means that they are receiving the plastic. So Alperon was hitting the Abergel family and may have even harmed Yitzhak Abergel. Again, this is Wikipedia, so I don't know if there are indiscrepancies or something like that. That's just the information that's available to everyone, and this is what I know. At the end of the 70s, okay, so there was an issue with drugs, gambling and drugs, trafficking, for which he was convicted. Now, here's the thing. Because the wealth of nations has to do with drug dealing, it means that it also has to do with child trafficking and child abuse. And so when we talk about persecuting people like Alperon, or even like Epstein, it was attempting to prevent them from becoming another country. Now, the fact that the country is based on this type of trade is a global issue. And I even predicted that when we talk about the change of economy, people like the gold standard, the petroleum standard, the sexual sovereignty standard. It's transforming the currency. I saw one person that tried to tend to that. I don't know what happened to him later. There was an attempt to target me. There was probably they tried to force him to work against me, over nothing. Like I was just, what you see me do here is what I do. It's no, I'm not that much of a hard worker. I record. That's pretty much what I do. In praise of leisure. Okay, because 1978, Alperon was sitting in jail for Iona. So there was protection. So they were doing protection, trafficking, drug dealing. Basically, they were doing a country inside a country. And this is where we come to the Pluto Aquarius, where we both understand that the people that were tagged as the criminal were basically competing the state. And that both the states and those supposed underdogs are still not the underdog that is the human rights. Because if you compete in the state, people expect to have human rights. People expect to have zero slavery, zero trafficking. Now, here's the thing. They've shown that they can do that. So they need to do that 365 days a year. But the challenge is cultural. The challenge is cultural because the culture was, and this is where we have now the Venus Capricorn, the Venus Sun Capricorn, and that was the ranking, the hierarchy, the patriarchy that went into. And we see that in the rite of passage. The rite of passage is consisting of, usually it's not women, it's men taking oaths, ritually abused, whether in whichever, because those, in the century of Gladio, we have an interface between the government, the drug trafficking, the military forces, the religious forces. And here is also where boys were raped and had to rape and so on and so forth. And that was a feminization ritual. So a lot of people, for example, when the IDF, there was an, I don't know if it was AI or not, picture of the IDF in Gaza wearing red dresses and so on and so forth. There were a lot of even the feminist demonstration with the red dresses, or that kind of thing is a feminization ritual. So the so-called feminists that demonstrated there, I wouldn't trust them to save people from trafficking. Okay? It's a ritual of feminization, of humiliation. People say, oh, the Nazis did it. No, it's not only the Nazis did it, it's that those are, and because, and this is also why the feminist goddesses were seen as demons while they were invoking them. Okay, the Lilitu, Liliti, Lilita that they write above the bed of an infant is basically invoking Lilith. Now, in those societies, they're so patriarchal, and anything feminine is a demon to be expelled. What will Lilith do if not kill the infant so that they wouldn't have to live into rite of passages of being, I'm sorry, getting raped as boys, having to rape boys, having to kill another a child has to kill a child, and they make the child as close possible to the child that is killing them, because they have to kill the innocent part of them. That's the meaning of those rites of passage. And in the century of Gladio, no one, absolutely no one, can claim that they don't do that. We can't say, oh, crime organizations, they don't harm women if they traffic people. And they can't say this is whore, because what made this thing whore, boy or girl, was ritual abuse and rape. This is why people began to recover from sexual abuse. They saw either avoiding of sexuality or hypersexuality, both associated with rape. Now, so this is interesting. Alperon was stealing protection from drug dealers. You see, you can barely, yeah, stealing protection from drug dealers. Now, you see, if he was not trafficking or drug dealing, stealing protection from drug dealers, if he would do housing first, okay, independent of the need to have sex for boys and girls and women and men, he would be the greatest leader of all times. If he had the power to charge protection from drug dealers, which means it means the Epsteins, okay? Not Jeffrey, the guys that do that to the 3 years old. Now, make no mistake about it, the guys that do that to the infants, they as infants went through things that, whether they're dissociated or not, were supposed to turn them into something that comes alive while doing those things, so that they would see it as a part of their nature. Which is inauthentic. It's not that they are not authentic to themselves. They are authentic to themselves, but because they went through those type of abuse, then what's left is that the most authentic is basically the predator. Which is inauthentic, not because the person is not honest, unaware, or not authentic, but because that was the goal of that ritual, and it's not undoable. It's not undoable, but we only got that far because of those rites of passage. And so people get to their 60s, their 70s, their 80s, suddenly persecuted for something they were told their whole life they can get away with. And not only that, that the very nature that caused them to desire that, or to have a nature that comes alive, well being, predatory in that way towards whether it's infant or children or whatnot, is essentially a trauma that they never had the right to access, the right to heal from. And they could be kings, they could be Weffin, they could be Huin, they could be drug lord, they could be, and he had a private cable TV, so media control. 1989, the police began to track him, and he was litigated in 1993. Again, we see the Soviet Union fall, Saturn, Neptune. They begin to close in. Right now, we also have a Saturn, Neptune. They begin to close in on the drug lords, close in on the crime families, because they don't want them to compete over power when everything's dissolving. Now, here is one antidote. If the wealth of nations will not be based on drugs, trafficking, and slavery, then we wouldn't be having this problem every Saturn, Neptune. Now, this entire culture, this entire religion, there's a lot of emotion attached to that, a lot of programming, ritual abuse programming attached to that. So what? So now families upon families upon families upon families, that's what they did to save their families. That's what they did to change from going to an underdog to a respectable position in society, whether it was because difference of bloodline, racism, and so on and so forth. So all of these people need to be mass graves over nothing. But for that not to be, we need to have a zero rape, zero trafficking society. Zero slavery, of course. There was also a criminal journalist, Yossi Hyman, that was litigated for crimes with him, blackmail, and so on. And he got over restaurants, places where people celebrate, let's say, marriages and stuff like that. I think the person who's supposed to be to playing his role, they look a bit alike. They look a bit alike. Yes, internet. 8 in favor. By the way, Saturn and Neptune is a great time to do a movie about any crime family or mafia. Neptune is film. Saturn is structure. So, for example, a feature film, it takes a lot to produce, a lot of years. I have been part of productions of films, and not fortunately for me, I was far enough. I was far enough from the problem to be, as Abraham Hicks says. But yes, those things. And by the way, that actor, what he was saying, he says they take you to makeup room, and they can turn. They have masks that they can turn every person to a double. And he said it wouldn't recognize that it's not the person. Now everybody understands what the use of that in intelligence. Sun, Venus, Mars, 17 degrees, triple conjunction, as we talk about it. Now let's do chart of Alperon. Venus hour. Let's see if we have. And again, it is just because, okay, the fact that any crime family is potential government, that we need to have zero rape, zero traffic in society. We need the competition to be based on an economy that is actually in favor of the people. An economy that is not just control, radioactive water that costs a fortune. Water, emotions, relation can't be where there's violation, trauma bonds, it's a pollution to the water. And this is why, because very easy to say, oh, this is crime family, they're this, they're criminals, they're that, they're that. No, the government was also crime family before it was the government. But the government is supposed to be representative of the people. And so that competition can't be around those, I'm sorry, either excessively matriarchal or excessively patriarchal. It's because we understand that it's not, oh, it's a criminal. No, it could be potential president, potential family to put prime minister. They're not, how should I say that? They're not less than a potential candidate, but the entire, both the governmental and non-governmental, needs to be on the basis of somebody is honoring human rights. Because that's the foundation. Saturn, Neptune in 0-degree Aries is the foundation of the world. If they have the entire foundation of the world based on drug and child trafficking, then in that, what is Saturn? If the foundation is on the basis of something that creates harm to the world, harm to the ecosystem, and so on and so forth, then that from the foundation goes dissolving. And it's many things. It's even the phone that I'm broadcasting. It's the internet that I'm broadcasting through. It's the waves and the frequencies. I pick up some herbs. So I went to the train station to see how much I have in my cart. And the nice guy there, the security guy, I said to him, listen, all of my bag is full with things that I can't put through that machine because of the radiation. He says, no problem. He said, but your microwave has worse radiation. And I say, yes, you're right. I'm not using microwave, but I think our phones. And he said, the phone is the worst radiation, particularly if you charge it at night and sleep. And I say, I also need to get rid of it. I say, I also need to get rid of that. But those are the foundations. And Neptune is waves. Now, 18 February 1955. Let's see how much 22 do we have here. We don't have the time. Where was he born? Givat Shmuel. I don't know. It would probably be Bnei Brak or Givat Shmuel. Good luck. Bnei Brak. Ramat Gan. Ramat Gan. What? Israel. Oh, F that. Okay, let's see if we have the chart. And here is that was what the Me Too was threatening. Yeah. High-tech nation. And that's the radiation issues. Let's take a look at the world news that should be exciting at this time. So but I also want us to take a look at the fact they say, oh my God, you talk about the crime family and so on and so forth. Falken, today crime family, tomorrow government, which means that sovereignty, zero trafficking, zero rape society is not just something to demand from the government, but also from the crime families. They want to roll, they want to reign, they want to rule. They should be providing for the people. And women are a part of the people, not just as mothers. And children are a part of the people, not just as cheap labor. And the family association is based on trauma bond, is creating persecution and extinction. Saturn, Neptune, 0° Aries. We either get it on time or perish. And the people that consider it disrespectful, if I didn't care, I wouldn't bother to talk about that. Iran and the Houthis. Fraternity marriage. Goes together like a bomb and radiation. The water is not clear with those storms in Syria, school attacks in Nigeria. Okay? We see how little, slowly but surely, Africa is coming to the forefront. Iran. They executed a supposed Mossad agent. Could simply be another person of them that they needed to solve a case. Venezuela's opposition leader tells Fox News her plans to return home. Hopefully she's not dealing with any drugs or children. Venezuela turning over $2 billion in oil to U.S., Trump says. Now here's the thing, Trump could have extorted the president and his spouse. He could get that oil through extortion, but he got it through an actual military action that was legal as per the United States rules and as per the Security Council rules. So we see what Trump is exposing here, and this is the structure. Okay, because if we talk about crime families, drug lords, and governments, The wealth is the same wealth, trafficking, extortion, and so on and so forth. And of course, when people said the Me Too went too far, because for them the entire foundations of the world are collapsing. Good morning! Saturn, Neptune, 0 degree Aries and 1 degree Aries. And they themselves have walked dead alive, looking their child in the eyes, knowing at what age does this child need to be buried alive with a dead baby? So that it will have a home, a job, a family. And they can't talk about it. So, okay, not talk about it, not talk about it, not talk about it, not talk about it. Mass graves upon mass graves upon mass graves upon mass graves without even a name to them. Lineages, families, bloodline, aristocracy, common people, this bloodline, that bloodline. Worse than the Great War and the Second World War together. We did not in this millennia and a half have Saturn Neptune conjoining in 0 degree Aries. Bless you. And my mom sneezed, which means that it's true. You know, they try to control everything. So they try to control my niece. They try to control my mom's sneezes. It's like if we can control the weather. They can't. Greenpeace can't talk about the chemtrails. So Russia's escorting tanker U.S. tried to board, hit White House issues in Greenland. So Greenland, usual Trump, Greenland, Trump and Greenland. You know, I look at Trump and Greenland and I say, I stay humble because we got the same issue. We got the Rahu and the 22 adjoined with the Arctic, different locations. Different, you know, I'm not a real estate lord, definitely not, you know, but I just look at that and I'm like, oh my God, because Trump has Rahu, and his Rahu is 22ing in Greenland. He's meant to fit, and Rahu is what we're meant to physically incarnate into. And he's meant to have some physical materialization with Greenland, and that's 22ing. So that he could absolutely be assassinated because of something to do with Greenland. And I look at that and say, my Rahu is ruled by the ruler of the ruler is the 22 Mars, okay, in the Arctic. Different region, different topics, different things. And that's something that, as an astrologer, I'm like, you know. And not only the location where my Rahu meets Rahu, I have my 22 Mars in the 12th house. Also Saturn, also Pluto. Saturn is defensive in the 12th house, but that is something that is quite challenging. Trump warns Venezuela to cooperate or risk new military attack. New U.S. military attacks. Sudan, Nigeria, Congo. Beginning to hear about now, going back to the chart of Alperon. The family came from Egypt, Phoenicians, and I was here in Egypt, the Egyptian Phoenicians. U.S. has a lot of eyes on the Nile. New Egypt, they call it. And they do a ton of ritual. They bring up a ton of ritual. We'll see. And I talked about it. The pyramids. They build the pyramids to have a gnosis. What was the gnosis? 6-9. The unification of the feminine and the masculine energy. Not the inverse one. What is the 6-9? It's a pyramid. It's a Capricorn entity. Okay. By the way, even people that really don't like the cults and don't this and don't that, a lot of them use the pyramidal structure because it holds. If you want, let's say, to hold the energy, you put a pyramid as an amplifier of bringing the energy from up and then spreading it down. So now, it's a strong structure. For example, when Elon Musk built the safety cars using somebody's life energy without permission, okay, without permission to something that if anybody was having a conversation and that was not based on violent rituals, I'd say, of course, a safety car is a great idea. The pyramidal structure is a strong structure. And of course, the creative energy knows to identify. If I go to next to the car and I see that and I see, and here is the thing, it is only that ritual of rape. And it causes a problem. It causes a problem around the safety car to be safe. Now, the pyramidal structure, the build a pyramid, the 6-9 is the unification. This is why it's the bigger sun is with Isis, which is Sirius. Musk has, I don't remember, I think he has Mercury there. The sun is earlier in Cancer, and Mercury ruling over his Virgo moon, and I have a moon there. And this is the bigger sun. The 6-9 is associated with the life energy and the unification of the masculine and the feminine. It's a fertile creation. This is why when Jupiter Venus met around Sirius, yes, I captured it, even though it was not the best election, next to Kronos, next to Hades, really dark topics, but it's something that is a big fertile creation. Sometimes, meaning it's associated also with Mars, meaning that there is a severing of the ties. Now, when they got the 6-9, when they got the unification of the feminine masculine, this union negates slavery, negates the pyramidal structure itself, not as pyramidal structure of safety and protection like you use for a safety car, but for societal. And this is why the Egyptians, if we take out the word Jews from the equation, and we say they built a pyramid, they built a structure, they got the gnosis, and then they had to release the slaves. Because that was the gnosis. And that gnosis also has to do zero slavery, zero, not man above woman, not woman above man. And a sexuality. What is the 6-9? Okay, the tantric embodiment. It is so much so that even if one does self-pleasure and but the genitals are not ready, okay, then they cannot even themselves touch themselves. That's what I learned after the Me Too. When I said something very weird happens in academia, instead of blame shame, let's talk about what I do want. And of the many things that I learned, one of the things were that tantric embodiment, which exposes everything that's not tantric in society as well. This is why I say for intelligence, if you have a rape in any of the rites, in any of the training, you don't have true cohesion. And Egyptians, the Phoenicians, they built the pyramid, they got the 6-9, they got the gnosis, but then they were challenged to embody that gnosis. And the Egyptian empire had to release the slaves. The bigger sun is Sirius, if we remember that. Because our solar sun, leaders, kings, actors, and so on, or actresses, and so on and so forth, that's one shining this very obvious light. The bigger sun is the 69. The bigger sun does not have a patriarchal or matriarchal notion to it. People say, oh, but Orion had slavery, had this, had that, had that. Maybe it had. But the bigger sun and the gnosis that were received from the pyramids was the union of feminine and masculine. It is not hierarchical, and it is not to only one rank. The more people practice that gnosis, the more sovereignty we have, the more sexual sovereignty we have, the more sovereign are the people. Sirius is the bigger sun, Cancer is the sign of the people, the moon rules the people. Each and every one of the people need to practice that gnosis. It's not just for the clergy, it's not just for the priesthood. And without this, it's very challenging to have economy that is not based on addiction. Because what is silver? What is the metal that they got from China, that the British Empire got from China? And each and every one of those had Egypt in their mind. Make no mistake about it. It was silver. Silver is the metal of the moon. Silver keeps emotional sanity. Gold keeps personality union. Silver purifies the water. Moon, nourishment, caregiving. But a mother cannot care for a child if she was molested, if she was abused. In fact, she will try to emasculate her child because she would fear it would be like the man that raped her when she was a child to be mother. I was shown things like this even from people in juristic system associated with child molestation. To show to which children, and for example, I was supposed to be born boy. The doctors thought I was boy, and then I came out girl. Boys that do not live with their father are more susceptible to be trafficked. Now, trying to control the bigger sun so that people will not have the gnosis is keeping everyone in something that leads to what they call Gogol-Magog, or the war of all against all, over nothing. And this is what, when the Krasi that lives next to the place where they come to see Sirius every year, she said, Master Ben Saduno, that was Bulgarian, I don't know to say prophet, but definitely a person that had great ability to predict things about the world. He said, this war is going to be bigger than all the wars. And it doesn't have to be at the same. I said it might be, if it will be bigger than all the wars, but it doesn't have to be at all. And it's only because this war is about zero rape society, zero slavery society. It's about the embodiment, and everybody Egypt, everybody Phoenicians, everybody knew Egypt. They don't say it. When I was working with Moldavite around COVID, immediately I saw the Phoenicians, the magic, and so on and so forth. And I said, what's to me in that? And I said, I only want to use those things only in favor of humanity. And the gnosis is the tantric gnosis. It's not for the top of the pyramid, it's for everyone. And the pyramidal structure itself was meant to bring that gnosis and to protect that gnosis as it permeates to every single layer, from the top layer to the bottom layer. Only that way is the empire safe. Everything leads to the fact that, and even Jupiter is approaching, is about to ingress to that decan, is so close to Sirius, is so close to the bigger sun. Saturn and Neptune meeting on the world degree. In Aries, 0 degree, the head of the baby. The foundation, the world is like a world birthing. And it's not just US going crazy, dropping A-bombs. No, it is a world birthing. Trying to chemitrail the sun or add another sun or add another this, or to try to prevent the fall of everything that is not the very gnosis we build the pyramids to receive and bring to the people, the nations, the land, is just going to have everything fall flat. Because if what derives us is control, then we build something that at the foundation is saying, I need to control nature because nature is not in my favor. Rather than, if I see nature, then I see where are the things that are in my favor and I can communicate with those things. And that is easily attained when the 6-9 practice, when the union, tantric union of the feminine, masculine within oneself and within one another is practiced. It negates slavery. It negates any type of sexual boundary violation, even in self-pleasure. Capricorn is the pyramidal structure that protects the 6-9 being from the top of the pyramid to the bottom of the pyramid. It's like a tent that brings in, if we want to harvest the water, we build, and we build these structures, and then we can have, if we have a bowl that has, and it's not my invention, it's something that exists for thousands of years, that can collect the water, the rain water, and then filter those waters so that the people can drink clear water. Only the 6-9 can attain that architectural structure. To those that say somebody doesn't know how to do the job. The job is not sex trafficking, is not harloting oneself. And I know it means that the people that are now at the top of the pyramid had to come to the sense that they themselves didn't have to be raped. But there was no structure that was allowing that gnosis, because they had to build the pyramids to get to that gnosis. And they used slavery to build that pyramid to get to that gnosis. But the whole point is, once we have that gnosis, that we don't need slavery. Because if the pyramid is built and we have that gnosis, all we really have to is to practice that gnosis. And then we can have the architecture that holds the water. And the water is clear. But if Greenpeace can't talk about the chemtrails, Greenpeace can challenge Standard Oil, but not talk about the chemtrails. Now, the Alperons came from Egypt, again, very likely, whether aware or not, they would be perceived as Jupiteranus. That's it, what I said, around Procyon. This is Yaakov Alperon, Jupiteranus around Procyon. Ketu Cancer, Rahu Moon, Venus in Capricorn. Sol at the end of Aquarius, 28 degrees Aquarius. Mercury, 17 degrees Aquarius. Mars, Chiron and Aries are now conjoining the Mars of Yaakov Alperon. Mars opposing Neptune.